And let me go. Welcome, welcome. We're almost there, folks. We have this week and then a couple more weeks in December for you to finish your final projects. Let me go to my RCC so that we can find what we need. Let me close this up. I'm sorry. Hold on one second. All right. All right. In my stay logged in. So for this week continues with Rome. We're going to finish up Rome today. We are going to, and it's interesting what's happening politically and socially, and our comparison to Rome, obviously, with what's happening in the United States. And then in your coursework, I know I saw, Olusegun, I saw that you emailed. Thank you for emailing me the quiz.
Thank you.
That was my fault because I did put the assignment in, but it wasn't open. You couldn't see it, so that was my problem. We have quiz on Rome extended until Wednesday. So Melam, it should be extended. If you can finish it by Wednesday, that would be perfect. And Olusegun, you don't have to resubmit. I'll just use the email that you sent. The other thing to start thinking about is the first version of the final, okay? And that's going to happen the Wednesday that we come back after Thanksgiving. You want to start, we started already, all of you have started already. You want to look at the, let's open this up so that you can see what you have here. When you get into the assignment, you have the same example in Unit 9. So you have these files already, but I want to just go over them. You have two possibilities for the final. You can either do an art project or you write a paper. The paper is comparing two artworks, and you can compare, you can go, there's a inscription, you can go to visit an online museum. Here are the museums that are available. You can go anywhere online. If you, no, don't go in person, it's not worth it. And you're going to take notes about what the image looks like, and there's a this gives you a rough draft of what to do, an introduction, a description. So go through this first. If you are not academic, you can do a creative project. So anything with a strong concept, a strong idea to start, right? To think about what do you want your artwork to say, and then you're thinking about creating something out of material that is accessible to you right now, okay? And so you want to write about that and give me a rough draft of what that's going to be for your final in a week and a half, so that I can give you feedback, and then we can go ahead and we can you're going to be presenting your final in a PowerPoint format, or the last day you're going to photograph your piece, you're going to speak about your work, just like you did when you did Identify Slide, except this time it's speaking about your own work. If you're doing the paper, you're going to present your paper, okay?
Professor.
Yes.
I need to get something clear. I'm interested in doing art projects.
Yes.
Okay. So if I'm interested in doing art projects, I have to choose out of the material you suggested here, soap, ice, clay, or form of doc. I have to choose one. Then
you can choose whatever material you have at home. So first, I think what we should do is, I think on Wednesday, if you are available, I'm going to send out a 10-minute one-on-one conversation as to what you want to do, and then think about what material is best for you to do that in. So for Wednesday, we're not going to have a regular class. I'm going to make one-on-one conversations with you, so that we can go deeper into what you want to do and what you want to create. And I think that will help answer and prepare for the final project. So I'm going to send out a schedule for Wednesday, starting at 10:30. It's the same time during class, and then 10-minute intervals. Those people who are not on the phone call can email me their suggested time, and I have time on Wednesday to meet with everybody, okay? So on Wednesday, we're going to go deeper into each of your individual projects. But for the final, you don't have to go just from the materials that you see here. It doesn't have to be one of these materials. It can be any material that you have lying around the house, okay? It can be made out of cardboard. It can be made out of, I mean, it depends on what your theme is and what you want to create. So if you want to get some permanent materials, if you want to get colored pencils, if color is important to your work, then I suggest getting some materials. But during the pandemic, I don't want you to go out. It's just something that you're going to collect from around the house. Okay? So, and if you don't have any materials, you can always opt to do the paper that you don't need any materials for. Okay?
Okay.
So is that clear? So a little bit. And again, based on what you decide to do, what you decide to create, I might suggest a material. So if you are dealing with showing, we'll talk about, I have a contemporary artist that we're going to look at his work today. So maybe that will help also answer some of the questions. You can start thinking about a materials of what you would like to use if you want to carve a piece of wood. It's another thing. You could go out and just go outside and collect those materials that you might need, fallen branches, you know, use the resources that you have around, and let's dig into it. All right. So for the paper, it's a little bit more clear. And if you read through the instructions and the description, it'll guide you as to how to write the paper. Okay. For now, just understand that on Wednesday, we don't have a scheduled class. It will be one-on-one meetings. Okay. And I will send, if you have a specific time that you would rather meet outside of class, that's possible too. I'll send you an email and you let me know what time will work best. We're still going to use the same Zoom link that we have been using for classes, okay? All right, I'm gonna jump into Rome 3 now. Again, this is not part of your, this is not part of the quiz or anything like that you have to prepare. Just let me know if the slides are working and they're switching, unlike the last time. All right, so let's clear off. For some reason it doesn't let me go back and share my screen with the PowerPoint. Okay. Let's go to current slide. So we're looking at the Roman Empire from 117 AD to 337 AD, okay? And again, we're talking about spanning 3 continents. You're thinking about really having huge direct lines between not only going across the Mediterranean, but there was certainly trade that was happening as far away as India and as north as England, okay? So there's some artifacts that we have found that the natural resources and the materials that come into these objects in England, in the Byzantine Empire, you have coming all the way across. So there must have been a much more people traveling, many more people going and trading resources that we don't associate with the ancient world. But here is the map showing the extent of the Roman Empire under Septimus Severus, one of the emperors of Rome. And there's another map showing the extent of the Roman Empire under Constantine. Constantine at the end of 337 AD, that's towards the end of the Roman Empire. And we'll talk about what happened during that time, that there was this huge, massive transition. And in fact, what's happening in the US is quite similar to that transition as we're moving forward. So I want to compare and look at those 2 epics. So we're looking at the Battle of the Romans and the Barbarians. It's a sarcophagus. Most of the time, Romans were cremated. The bodies were cremated, but sometimes there were people that were buried in sarcophaguses. And here we see a really dense fight that is happening between the Romans, and the Romans are here on horseback. They're here with their helmets, and these are the people that they call barbarians. Usually the barbarians are bearded, they have longer hair, and in fact they would have been coming more from the north. So Rome would have been invaded from here, from sort of the Germanic lands up here into Rome. And that would have been the main fight between the Romans and the barbarians. So you see these really interesting, really dense 3-dimensional carvings that go way into space. Imagine the flat marble, and then you have to go all the way around. You draw the scene, on the marble, and then you have to carve all the way around it. So this hand, for example, right here of the soldier, is actually in space. It's dug out and around, which means that the sculptor had to really, some of these figures are embedded within the marble. Other ones are three-dimensional, and that's why you have that very deep shadow that happens underneath arms, underneath legs. You can see horses. The more you look at this scene, the more things you can see more and more figures, because none of the surface is left empty. You have horses embedded within this. The figures get smaller and smaller towards the center. The clear central figure here is over here, the central, what looks like an emperor over here on his horseback. He's larger than the barbarian figures towards the bottom. And you have them also dressed in different wardrobes, which set them apart. But let's have a look at one of the details. So here's one of the Roman soldiers, and he's deciding, he has the head of this barbarian in his hands, and he's really deciding the fate of what is going to happen to this person. So here's a small detail from the battle of the Romans and their barbarians from 250 to 260 before Common Era. You can look at how in the Greek times, this was similar to the Dying Ghoul, which is a Roman copy based on a Greek original of, again, the Greeks depicting their so-called enemies. And again, it was in the style of hair, but there was a layer of empathy. Same over here, when you look at the Roman's face, the soldier's really sort of debating, just through the facial expression. He just has his eyebrows pointing a little bit upward, which makes him seem like he has a little bit of concern over the other person that he's holding. And that's something important, I think, is to recognize these symbols and these facial features of empathy and what that means, and how we communicate through visual expression, through what our face does, right? Any thoughts about this? Because it's holding the sort of the other in one's hand, right? The so-called enemy. So we're going to go into the late imperial empire in Rome, and we're looking at the Emperor Caracalla. And what was significant about Caracalla is his expression is very different from the standard emperor. So the standard emperors were depicted young, youthful, usually with serene face. But here we come to Imperial Rome, where the rulers become one general after another. And usually the general kills off the previous general and becomes the emperor himself and claims himself emperor. For Caracalla, he was quite brutal. He was a general in an army. He has a different style of hair, different style of facial features. He doesn't have the traditional Roman locks of hair. He has, here the sculptor is carving in to show the details. So for example, if you look, it's almost like a buzz cut. It's a military cut. And you're looking at the facial features that are not carved in the relief. So there's not a thicker part of marble that they're carving into the facial hair. Here you have the sculptor carving directly into the cheeks to represent the facial features. The other thing that the beard and any other hair that's on the face, when you're looking at his eyes, talk to me about the expression that he has. What do you see in this particular one? It's different, for example, for Augustus, who was smiling. Imagine this as your emperor being put all around Rome, right? What kind of feeling do you have towards this emperor, this particular one? And how can you tell?
Tiger.
He looks like he looks a bit vicious. He looks a bit mean.
His
right?
It's a frank, you know, he has a frank face.
Right. He has. Sorry. Melam first, and then we go to Olusegun. Melam, what were you saying?
Oh, I was saying his eyebrows were like coming together, and with his eyes, like that's just very angry.
Yeah, he has an angry expression on his face. He is definitely a ruler that rules with an iron fist. Again, he probably came to power killing off one of the generals that was in power, and it becomes a very unstable Roman epic. Okay. So what they choose to do instead is to have 4 tetrarchs, 4 emperors that rule four different sections of the Roman Empire. So there was a tetrarch that ruled the Western Empire, a tetrarch for the Eastern Empire, a tetrarch for the Southern Western Empire, and Southern Eastern Empire. So you had these four emperors that were supposed to co-rule together. And here's a sculpture of them, which is very interesting because now the tetrarchs look exactly the same. You have them in the similar wardrobe. You have them almost looking exactly the same. The face is stylized. You have them corner to corner, shoulder to shoulder, to kind of show that they're going to rule the empire together. So here, Diocletian declared emperor by his troops in 284. To restore the order, he shared the power with three rivals. Okay, so there was the rule of four. Adopted the title of Augustus of the East, Augustus of the West, and Caesar of the East and Caesar of the West. So the Augustuses were younger, Caesars were older, or maybe I'm getting that backward. They ruled together until Diocletian's retirement in 305, at which point the Tetrarchy collapsed and civil war followed. So there was an idea that they were going to co-rule together, that one person's going to get one section of the empire, the other one's going to get the next section, and they were join and rule together. However, and you can see that in this sculpture that it was depicted that these were definitely, if you look at the faces, the only difference between them is that the older ones have a little bit of the beard, whereas the younger ones do not. But they were supposed to be identical. They were supposed to meet, and that would mean that they would that they would rule together in the same way, in the same manner. And that's why the sculpture is depicted in the very similar manner. If you look at the bodies, they're very different. They're misproportions. The heads are too big for their bodies. And it's not about necessarily showing and representing the human form at all. It's more about the symbol of this idea that the empire is unified, that they're ruling together. And again, there was no concern about having the drapery go over a human form underneath. In fact, their arms are too long and too wide for the torso. And again, the bodies are misproportionate. So what happens at the end of the Tetrarchy is that one of the younger Caesars, who's Constantine, who's ruling in the West, decides that he has a message from God to take over the section of the empire. So here he creates a Roman sculpture of for himself, a colossal, huge, 40-foot tall sculpture of himself. And we only have little traces left. We have the head, we have the knee over here, we have the elbow, we have the hand pointing up. So let's compare the expression on the two faces. Here we have a huge face of Constantine on the left and Caracalla on the right. What's the difference in expression, especially since the eyebrows are no longer together? You don't have that angry look anymore. Here, Constantine is actually turning to Christianity. He seemed to have received this message from God saying that he should take over the other half of the Roman Empire, and he goes on to kill off the co-ruler, the other tetrarch that he was supposed to co-work with. So he's deciding to, first of all, change and become the leader himself. And second of all, he's changing the philosophy of the Roman Republic from a multi-god belief system into one God, into the Christian God. And he transforms the Roman Empire to Christianity, which inadvertently actually is the end epic of the Roman Empire. So here's his sculpture over here, again, huge. And let me show you where it was housed. He for his co-ruler, it was Maxentius. And Maxentius, who was one of the tetrarchs ruling with Constantine, started creating this basilica over here. Again, the basilica would have been a place for law or for judgment when you went to battle. So if civilians were coming into the basilica, it was a space where you got your laws ordained to you or told to you, like almost like a judge. So imagine this being like the courthouse. So Maxentius starts this building But after Constantine takes over and kills off Maxentius, he takes over this building and creates this 40-foot sculpture within one of these domes. So here we have the domes over here. Again, it's a huge, huge architectural setting. So if you look at the bottom image on the right-hand side here, you can see the relationship and the scale of the person to one of these arches. Again, because Romans were using concrete for the first time, they could pour molds and create these huge, huge architectural spaces for people to enjoy. Here you can see the coffers in the basilica so that it would distribute the weight of the dome at the top. These coffers would cut out material so that you would have less weight for the ceiling, and therefore you can build a bigger arch and you can have it be much lighter than it actually was. And in this huge space, in this one of these archway is where Constantine would have been sitting. You're almost thinking about the huge sculpture of Abraham Lincoln in the center, again, surrounded by architecture in Washington, D.C. So here we have, again, he would have had that huge sculpture sitting in the center. So he's proclaiming new authority and heralding in a new era for the Romans with a difference in philosophy, a difference in mentality. On his deathbed, he becomes, he changes his religion, his own religion, to Christianity. And he also builds this, emperors often build arches for themselves. And these were sort of Victorian or victory arches where they would go with a procession with the people, if they went to conquer lands. This is where the procession would go through. So here is the Arch of Constantine. But what Constantine did is he took different sculptures from different emperors throughout Rome's rule. And there were these 5 good emperors that were called. And he took the sculpture elements from their monuments and put them on his own. So from Trajan, Emperor Trajan, he took these 4 sculptures at the very top that are standing at the top. And he's trying to connect himself to the greatest rulers of Roman Empire. So you have here, again, these 4 sculptures, these freestanding sculptures, to be from Trajan's era. Marcus Aurelius, right, has the 4 reliefs over here at the very top. Then you have Emperor Hadrian's roundels, which are over here. And only towards the bottom in these friezes, these rectangular friezes in the middle of the arches, you have the frieze of Constantine. So he's literally taking out artwork from other places where the different emperors created their artwork, and he's setting it into his own arch, which is interesting. He's kind of playing with history. He's only picking and choosing what he wants and trying to associate himself with that history. Here we have the victory, almost going back to Nike, but again, we've moved from, and here we have that winged figure one more time. Here is where he defeated, at the Milvian Bridge, he defeated his co-tetrarch. He defeated the other emperor, Constantine, at this bridge. And again, to him, it was a symbol or a message from God that he was supposed to go and fight his co-ruler so that he would have the sole authority over Rome. What's important is that then Constantine takes the center not to be in Rome. He takes the capital and he moves it to Istanbul. Back then, they changed it to Constantinople. And he changes the Roman Empire to be religious. So we have in 325 Council of Nicaea convened by Constantine, Christianity becomes a de facto religion of Roman Empire, and rapid decline of pagan religions. So again, with the change of mentality, suddenly comes a whole new era, and actually the demise of the Roman Republic. In 330, the new Rome founded in Constantinople. Constantine is baptized on his deathbed, beginning of the transition from the pagan to Christian medieval world. So here we have, Constantine was co-ruling this section of the Roman Empire. He moved the center from Rome all the way to Constantinople, which is a huge central trading post, and very important city, obviously, to go across through the Mediterranean, as Rome was. But here we go, moving the center of Rome to Constantinople and reorganizing the whole of the Roman world. at that point, it was very, very hard because you had a lot of different people invading the Roman Empire from various angles. And so the right side, this eastern part of the Roman Empire becomes the Byzantine Empire, whereas the Western Roman Empire becomes medieval, and the Crusades start over here. So it's inadvertently he tried to usher a new Rome, but actually split the culture apart. All right, comparing here between Constantinople's Milvian Bridge over here on his arch, and here we have a detail from Trajan, the first sort of good emperor, as he was labeled, where Romans were conquering lands, but also building infrastructure like roads and bridges and buildings. So when you look at these two, look at the style that they were carved in. And during Christianity, or at the start of Christian art, the figure becomes much less important. You can see the difference in the way that these are depicted, and look at the size of them and the scale of them. And then look at the ones that were depicted over here on the bottom. Here in the bottom, you're still harking back to classical times. The figure is really important. They're really modeled. The proportions are accurate. Here at the top, it becomes something more symbolic. To represent soldiers here, you have just one after the other. So it just depends on what mindset you want to create with. Both are valid, but they're certainly completely different way of stylized, of creating artwork. What do you see as the difference between these two? Amy or anyone? Georgina, do you see, what do you see at the bottom over here and at the top? All right. So, well, I think
at the top we saw some defensive army.
You have the soldiers over here defending. Yeah, you have this battle that's happening, right? Yeah.
But at the bottom, there's no sign of. They dress like an army too, like a soldier too. But I don't see armor to defend or dragon or whatever in their hands.
Yeah, they're actually building. So part of the job of the Roman Empire at the beginning of the Roman Empire was that they, even for the soldiers, they would not only be the conquerors, but they would also be, that's in 113. So only 200 years later, you have a very different sense of the Roman Empire. First, the Roman Empire did take over, and they did take over different lands, but their main mission was also to build and to construct, which you can see here. These soldiers are building this building that's happening over here. So you have the main, probably Emperor Trajan himself over here in the center, and you have the army being used to build and to create and construct. So for creative purposes, right? They're building infrastructure. Whereas here at the top, you have a emperor that's warring with his own emperor. They were supposed to be co-rulers, and you have him coming in and killing the other emperor off. So you have soldiers that are battling, within it's almost like a civil war. You have the one side battling each other. They lose at the Milvian Bridge. And again, it's more of an army. It's more about rigidity, about seeing the symbolism of the army rather than the figures and you're not glorifying the figures anymore. It's not important. And if in fact in Christian art, it becomes completely irrelevant and the body's no longer important. And the body's, not what's prized in Christianity. It's more the spiritual realm. So it's interesting how different artwork can reveal different principles to us. If you're interested in the body and the form and you want to get that correct, that's one thing. But if you have a different philosophy that you're living under, it's not important, right? In the Christian faith, it's about being in the spiritual realm, and the body's not in fact seen as sinful, right? So it's interesting to think about how fragile the Roman systems were. We went from having a republic ruled by senators, then into imperial Rome's being started being ruled by emperors, and then sort of falling apart to these general emperors who started killing each other off. And it's interesting to think about how malleable. We think that we're in a state of democracy, that this is going to persist forever, but of course it's so fragile, right? Once a ruler really separates and makes people feel like they're different from one another, even within the same country, right? Just like we are seeing the polarized ideas between Republicans and Democrats, that it seems like we are not one people. It seems like we're quite fragmented, that some people have these beliefs, some people have other beliefs. And when people separate those and start not seeing each other as, everyone fundamentally wants similar things, right? But if we start separating, then that separateness is going to become a problem that politicians use. So that I found interesting in terms of the Romans. All right.
Professor, I have some questions.
Go for it, Merlin.
So, it's the one down there, dedicate, right? In 100 something.
Right.
Is that the one older one?
Yes, that's the older one. That was from Trajan. So Trajan had a huge column with 23 scenes as it went up around the column. I believe we looked at it in Rome too. Trajan would have come up, and he created a whole public space for people with this column in the center. So every emperor tried to have a propaganda about themselves of what they had created. And Trajan particularly wanted to show off that he expanded not only the empire, but he built infrastructure in lots of the sort of other lands that they conquered.
The whole figure's like, it's so much more detailed than the newer one. I was kind of amazed by that because I thought, if getting better, that's one thing I found earlier in the Egyptian sculpture too, that how come the stone sculpture, remember the one with the queen and the king, that one, it's like very smooth, but then later on, actually, no, I was wrong. There were two different people, like the man, one is like the one who's sitting down and holding the pen, and the other one, it's like he has a really strange, very thin arm, but like, I don't know, this marble man, but the marble man looks like the one that's painted and then sitting down, holding the pen, that one looks so much more smooth in that sense. But then the other one, it's like, it's uglier, but then it's actually newer. So I was like, wait a second, how come different, like, think about technology. If being better, being newer, it's necessarily actually the better that we're thinking. Like, what's the standard of the better? So it's kind of interesting that, that's
very
actually
interesting.
the newer one.
Yeah, no, it's depending on the philosophy. And it's not that sculptors got worse after 200 years. It's not that they didn't know how to sculpt the body. It's a choice and a style that Constantine didn't want to have his body represented, or didn't want the artwork represented in that way. He didn't want to hark back to the older traditions. Or there might have been there could have possibly been that the sculptors didn't continue training in a particular way, because they knew, since Greek times, they knew how to sculpt the body and the form and proportions, and they could physically do it. But because there's a switch, and especially during the beginning of the Christian era, and think about the philosophy too, right? Think about Jesus preaching that it's about developing your spiritual plane to go to another realm, right? And therefore the physicality of your body is not important, especially in Christianity, where the body's sinful, right? So you're representing a form, but it can't be in the same way that the Greeks represented the form. That would have been seen as sinful. And imagine in Greek times also the sculptures were painted, right? So you get a completely nude sculpture with completely, fully painted and everything. That would have been a confrontation to the Christian way of being. So that's not the kind of art you want to represent. And so it was a stylized way. And you have to find different ways to express. Each of the emperors had, like Caracalla, There's a reason why he wanted to depict himself in that sort of nasty way, because he wanted to scare people off, right? He was a soldier, he was the general, and that's that, right? And so he wouldn't have wanted himself looking youthful and beautiful for everybody to love. In fact, he wanted to be feared, right? And so these different choices go with different mentalities. And it still continues, right? Your artwork will be particular to what you believe in and what you find important. So if you find the body important, it'll show up in your work. If you find another dimension important, for example, in Islamic art, the figurative is not included at all. And we're going to look at Islamic art coming up before the end of the semester. There was a question in the Byzantine Empire of how to represent this dimension of God, of what we consider God, right? And in the flesh, it wouldn't have worked. It doesn't work that way, right? It's something else. So geometry was the way to describe the sort of heavenly sphere. And the figurative was not supposed to be represented at all. The figures weren't supposed to be in it at all. So different traditions have a different way of creating work, right? And particularly different, and there was a whole, like for Egyptian times, for 3,000 years, they had to depict the same work because they wanted it that way. When there was one pharaoh who changed that, right? Akhenaten, again, one god, went to a completely different realm, and his artwork was completely different from the Egyptian style. Egyptian styles were rigid for 3,000 years, passed on to generations, same way, self-sculpture. Akhenaten comes along and says, no, because I have a different philosophy, I'm going to have curved bodies. And there you have, ancient aliens taken on because the form and the body's curved, the head is elongated. There was a discussion about Akhenaten being, having a disability or a deformity, right? That was then expressed, but that was a style and a choice for him to depict himself in that way. Fascinating stuff. Okay. So I want to quickly show you contemporary artwork. Let me go to share screen, and I'm going to share the work of going to Ferguson. So Ferguson's work is part of the Immigrant Biennial, and I want you to go check it out. I'm going to send you a link in an email. There's 4 sections to the Immigrant Biennial that's happening now. It's a contemporary exhibition of contemporary artists that are happening, and you have 4 sections to it. You have homeland, the idea of, where's home? What does that mean? How is that defined? All the artists that are in the exhibition are immigrants themselves. The second section is called the immigrant arrival. Third section is mother tongue. And last sections are performances. You can see the exhibitions once you click on, they're all virtual, so you can go and click on them. We're going to talk about the work of Ferguson Amo here. His whole work and his whole series of work is black marker on watercolor paper. There are these amazing depiction of people from Ghana, from the Ghanaian Empire, as well as people from America. So you have this East meets West, and the idea of a black identity and what that means. But understand, these are not photographs. These are, the background is drawn, the figures are drawn with a small highlighted to see where the light is coming from. Remember how we did the hands, we studied light, medium, and dark, and how the form is represented by those light, medium, dark. Otherwise, there would be no form. And so just having the small highlights in these kind of theatrical poses. And here are some of the details. Again, it's pen on watercolor paper. So you have these forms that are just coming, just the white of the paper is left. The rest of it is black marker shaded over and over and over, so that you have these various shades. You have very, very dark for the background. So the black of the background is really layered on so that it seems like it's a matte background. And then you have the different shades where maybe a 3 or 4, but you have to think backwards. You have to leave the light and draw in all the shades. You can also work the other way around, where you work on a black surface and you just highlight with white. But he does it with pen and marker on watercolor paper. So again, all these forms are just drawn. And obviously figure is very, very important, right? How it's depicted with what the way that people are standing, the way that they hold their body is a particular language. It's a type of, for example, how this figure is standing. What is that? What do you think this pose is when one is just standing in this kind of way? And you can think about the Roman emperors, and it's a regal way of standing. It's you have your spine out. Same with actually when you look at all these figures, right? The figure on the left here, the figure on the right, how he is standing, how they are standing, how are they embodying those poses. You have, I think, the Ghanaian representing over here on the right, whereas the Americans more on the left. I'm only guessing just because of the clothing that they're wearing, right? And how they are sort of meeting in this space. Any thoughts or ideas or comments about this work? I find it really interesting. East meets West. Any thoughts between them? And again, the way that they're standing in the bodies. So go ahead.
There's a sort of discussion going on, but I mean the posture of that man, the way he's standing, mean like he came in peace. So it's not like, because when somebody stand like that, which means like no threat to you at all. So yeah.
Yeah, and the way that they're standing and these kind of gestures of sort of offering or communicating with one another, passing on. Certainly all the people from Ghana have their hands up. You have this female figure in the back standing very straight, right? Passing on. And here it seems like they are in dialogue, sort of talking to one another between these forms that he's balanced out. I mean, it's very symmetrical. You have these people in relation to the people that they're right across from.
I think it's cut it in half. Of the left-hand side, people are more of observer. They're more standing still and receiver. They're not really like, maybe they're reacting, but like they're mostly reacting. Feel like they're not really trying to actively do something except for the person on top in the middle. But that could have been like, what? That kind of expression too. But the people on the right hand side are mostly expressing, so they're more like performers, or more like.
It is very like, performative. No, you're right.
It's like the message going in somewhere, and then they're like kind of having this. It almost just feel like everyone on the left hand side, they somehow have this mirror or the show right in front of them, so they're not actually crossing over it that much.
And I think there's something to be said for the different climates where people in climates that are warmer, you have the ability to sort of open up because it's hot, and you can kind of have this kind of body gesture where you can be more open. Whereas when you go to the north, the shoulders collapse. The heat, you want to keep the heat in when it's cold, right? And suddenly you're covered with those blankets. So the gesture is really sort of hidden by these massive coats and the hoods and everything, because you're trying to be warm. Whereas when you take it off, there's a whole other body gesture that you can see when you go north and when you go south. People in Boston seem like they're closed off because they have their coats and their bundles and they're sort of, even when they're not in Corona, right? They're just kind of closed in. Whereas when you go more towards the south, I find that people are more open. They're willing to talk. They're expressing in a different way. So it's interesting to be able to see that in this piece.
Oh yeah, they have their hats on too. All of them on the left hand side.
Right. You have the hoods or the hat, one or the other. Whereas these you can see the faces, the portraits. Again, they're it's very, very interesting. Any other thoughts or comments on this work? So if you are interested in this work, I would encourage you to look at the virtual immigrant biennial and have a look at the work, read a little bit about it. There's like a paragraph on each of the works, as well as the artist websites. Yeah, you can definitely check it out and see if you're interested. And then on Wednesday, I will put out a schedule so that I can meet with you 10 minutes at a time. Those of you who would like to do it today, I'm happy to stay because we are going to end the class a little bit early today. I'm happy to stay today and have individual meetings with you now if you're ready. Okay?
I think I'm ready.
Great, then we'll have a conversation right after everybody, you know, I want to let everybody go so that you don't have to stick around. If you're interested to stick around, and if Oleshegun, if you're open to the dialogue, then we can do that together. But those of you who need to go tend to more important things, feel free to go. Again, from now until the rest of the semester, we're going to be reviewing different cultures, but we're also going to be completing your final project. So we want to talk how to do that in your home space, because it's very different to do that in the classroom where all the material is there. All right, who would like to, so those of you who will see me on Wednesday, you're welcome to go. I'll send you a schedule. Those of you who would like to take care of it today and we'll have a 10-minute meeting, it means that you're not gonna need to log into class on Wednesday. So we can do it today.
I'll go second.
Okay, all right. So let's all stay and let's have Wednesday off. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And it's okay if we have this conversation with, it might be informative actually to hear the conversation. So Oleshegun, going to start us off. What do you want to create? And sorry, Ayomida, what were you going to say?
Is this about the final project?
This is about the final project, yep.
All right.
Okay. All right, we'll start with Oleshegun and then we'll move across to everybody, those of you who are here. Talk to me about what you want to do, Oleshegun.
Yes, it's still about this justice denied is a justice, I mean, a justice delay is a justice denied. You know, I was still interested in preaching that justice, that is a power of common man, you know, and I still want to carve something to show that injustice is not good. And then
yeah, injustice collapses society.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I got these two, I don't know, to help me in capsing and whatever. So since you said I can easily get soap around me.
Okay.
I can get candle around me.
Okay.
I don't remember other things that I can. So, like, how many things do I need to produce?
So
and
I would
how
say,
do you want me to record it?
Okay, so those are all great questions. So think about if you are doing soap and candle, you can make more of it. So if you have a pan, for example, if you have more than one bar of soap, for example, you can melt it down and put it in a larger Tupperware, right? And pour in so that the word justice becomes more of a message if it's larger than fitting in the palm of your hands, right? So you can think about, or injustice, in fact, it could be larger. Same thing with candles. You can melt them down, and if you have a cooking pan, you can pour the candle wax inside, and it should be able to pop out. You have to experiment with what material. For example, if you're boiling the soap and putting it into a Tupperware, it should be able to come out, but you know, just be mindful about how you take it out, how you flip it off and kind of press it down so that it would fall down, not breaking.
What if I put the oil in the pan before I melt it?
You could put some sort of surface. I wouldn't put oil. I would put, there are some, you can do, hold on one second. There's a petroleum jelly. Petroleum jelly
like Vaseline?
Like Vaseline, exactly. Vaseline will coat and be able to stick and hopefully come out. But this is something to experiment with. Take a little version first, pour some, have it coated with Vaseline, or you can do wax paper or something, and then you can take it out. So experiment with that and decide how large you want it. the carving tools that you got, I think are for wood. So if you are carving out of wood and out of more solid material, those are good ones. You can still carve very softly, but the cut is so sharp. Just be careful about when you're cutting with those sharp tools into a soft material, because you don't want it to quickly slice, because they're very, very sharp. So just be very careful using them. They're meant for wood and carving it out of wood. So if you want to have the word, you can have the impermanent word injustice in something meltable. You can have the permanent word justice out of something solid. So if there is pieces of wood or trees that are come down and you want to carve justice into those, right? Exactly.
You know, I've done this already.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I did this some times ago when you are asking us to do some impermanent something.
Yes. So again, think about what material for what word. If you want the word justice, if you scratch the word justice into an abandoned building, right? And then make it permanent and have that front between buildings that are, if you put it into a permanent material, it says one thing. The impermanent one will be the opposite of the word, and it'll be melted away. So just try a variety of them, and then just record it with your phone. You don't have to make it a big deal. Just make sure you have good light when you're photographing the work, so that we can really see the word. We really need to make sure that word is very, very clear. Just like you wrote it in that in the poster, it needs to be very precise and clear. So you could print it out on a printer first to really get the words correctly. So it's not just handwritten, because justice will represent everyone. And the handwritten word will be just about the person who's writing it, if that makes sense, right? It would be the personal mark. So again, it's going to be a stylized how you want to do it. That's why these projects are so important to do a number of times, so that you get, the idea is very, very strong, but you have to see which one will work best for you. Ask me more questions. Any others?
For now, no.
Okay. So just play with what you have. And again, really, if you want to carve it out of cardboard, you can. So don't think that this needs to be, you have to go shopping for materials. You don't. You can find surface if you write the word injustice in chalk on sidewalk. In front of a school or whatever, right? That says a message. So you don't have to, go beyond what you already have to put your message out. Okay. All right. And I'd love to see some examples when you do your first draft by next week. If you have some examples that you're testing on, if you have a couple of soaps that you wrote and you want to talk to me about the particular handwriting or whatever, I'd love, the more information you can give me, the more feedback I can give you.
Okay.
All right. I will see you not on Wednesday. I will see you next Monday. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
All right. And be well. Stay healthy. Who would like to go next?
Maybe.
All right. Maylam, talk to me about what you want to do.
I have this. Well, I had one going on already. Remember last time I did the potato?
Yes.
So the outcome is unexpectedly good. That I carved it. And then I have been not freezing, but I put it into a fridge to keep fresh, but then it's still raw. So it actually meets my what I wanted. The more greedy that you have, the idea of it is to carve a potato that you can eat, but not eat it, put it there. So it's a luxury in that way, that it raw into this is you can see this whole part, it's darkened already. Mm-hmm. But if I do light, if I put it in a certain lighting, I can see the characters still very clear. But I'm this part is already soft, so I shouldn't touch it hard, otherwise I just squish it. Right. As one of the characters, the strokes are kind of very soft already. So I think this is a good one, but I don't know if I should continue doing the same idea on different object, which is, I think it's kind of waste. So
you have the word greed, right?
Yeah.
Greed. On potato.
Yeah, it's literally greed over here.
That's perfect. Okay. So that idea, and I think the way that it's changing every day is really important. Like the way
But
that
I didn't record ever since, so I
right.
was.
So that's what you want to, I think now that you know that that's what happens, and that's why this takes few versions, you want to start recording the word greed from the time that you've carved it. And then maybe instead of freezing it, leave it out and see how it shrivels, see how it decays, see how it turns to mush. If you can stand it, maybe have it outside on your deck somewhere every
Like,
day.
stinky.
Right. Right. And maybe an animal will end up eating it or whatever. But you could take that, the same potato, same background when you're photographing. So it's from the same shot. So you have to think about your camera being still. Okay. Then you photograph the picture and put it away. The next day, take the potato back, photograph it, and keep doing that every day for a month. And then you could put it into the still pictures can go into a loop where you can see it slowly. I'm going to send you a video. There's a artist who did a video, I think it's called A Small Death. And she put out also, I think I think it was a rabbit or something. And the mold that started growing on it, and thinking about how we think about death as being the end. And of course, there's so much organic things that happen to the carcass of the. It's a bit gruesome, but it's actually quite beautiful because she's following a beautiful light. And if you were in the same space, it would be disgusting because you'd be smelling it. But visually, it becomes this transformation, and that's what you're talking about in your potato. You're talking about this idea of the word greed and what it does, and it consumes, and the mold that grows on it is so particular because it's such a it's so connected to that word greed, right? And you could experiment with different materials. You could carve it into an apple. You could carve it into any perishable material. You could put it into bread. Same thing would happen. You can also this is between cooking and using your food. I don't know how much you want to sacrifice for this project, but anything you could carve the word greed into bread and like soak it in milk, and let it kind of, you can do so much with this idea and this project. You could also bake it. Anyway, you might want to have some fun over Thanksgiving weekend, play with your food, put the word greed into it in a number of ways, and see how many ways it could deteriorate or deform, or because it's an important topic. It's an important idea. This idea of taking more than your fair share, and the ramifications that it has for the planet. Forget the human species, but for the planet is huge. And so for people to start thinking about when they're feeling greedy, or when they, to think about that mentality and what the destruction that it causes, and in fact that it's a negative concept. It's great. It's a great project. The number of ways that you could create this project is huge. It's just up to you. And you could, if you just take the potato and do it again and photograph the mold growing, that's the exciting part. And I could see why it was exciting for you, is that suddenly this word starts becoming manure, really.
I wasn't expecting that. I was just kind of like, I was still thinking about it, like, how can it be like more dramatic in that way of like, it shows how greediness sometimes, well, not sometimes, most of the time, it's so extra in that way that like, but yeah, because I was thinking into a planet, into a plant, so it grows green stuff, but it's so hard because I'm not good with maintaining lives, so I end up always just getting those desert plants so they never die. But the other one I had, it's like these wood chops that like I was thinking of painting over it, because these are the woods from the trees that I witnessed that they're being cut down in front of my old apartment, and like the whole like mini tiny the living area is just gone, because every day I remember like just seeing squirrels coming around and like having breakfast and everything. So I was thinking of like recording everything around there on these woods by itself, like what happened to it, it would be very meaningful too. But like I don't know which one should I do.
So try both and see which one you want to do, which one gives you more pleasure. If you're recording evidence of life on this cut wood, it could be you could take a pen and write almost like a journal entry on the circle of the wood. But again, there's multiple ways to go about this concept. I would pick one that you sort of really stick with for a week and see how much that gives. For example, I think the idea of light, and when you're photographing this potato now mushing and getting deteriorating,
I'm
it
curious.
could be
how
quite beautiful actually to
I
just to
think I would
record
do
it.
the potato now that we think of it. It's interesting. I think I should put several different potatoes in different locations
Mhm.
just to see what happened.
Yeah.
If I put it right under the tree,
Mm.
it'll be gone. Yeah.
What would happen, right? And you can have this kind of interact. You can also think about the greed. You can take, if you have squirrels around, you can take seeds like sunflower seeds and write the word greed out, right? And then distribute it to the birds and squirrels and record that, right? Like taking rid of your own sort of greed, right? Giving it to another creature and then recording. It's almost like a drawing. They will pick out, the word will disappear because the birds and the squirrels will take it away, right? And if you could record, there's so many things, so many ideas,
Okay.
but really good ones. I mean, that's what you want at the beginning of the project. You want to be full of ideas, and then take one or two of them and say, right, I'm going to try to do this for a week and see how it goes, and be diligent about photographing it as it changes, so that you have a series or something to work for starting next week. Okay.
Okay.
Does that answer some of your questions, or does it open up more questions?
Well, it doesn't open up more question at this point, but it's a good reminder that I should do so many different things based on this.
I think let yourself play.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. All right. And if you have any questions between now and Wednesday, I'm also happy to meet with you Wednesday. But if you're content and if you have a direction, you don't have to stay because we had a conversation today. Okay.
Hey, have a good day.
You
Bye.
too. Who would like to go next?
Hi.
Amy, you want to go?
Yes.
And then Georgina. Okay. Amy, talk to me about what you want to do.
Okay.
I've been thinking about a lot of things. I'm just trying to narrow it down to one specific topic. I think I tend to watch a lot of movies that are kind of either like life lessons or realistic. So just recently I watched a Netflix about Trial 4. I don't know if anybody watched it, but it was the wrongful incarceration of Sean Ellis, who was imprisoned for 20 some odd years for the killing of a police officer, but he did not do it. So he spent 25 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. So, although,
Lifetime.
yeah, and he was 19 at the time, so he spent more than his life in prison. So, of course, I started with the guns, but I don't know how to bring that into a possible, something that's kind of meaningful and suggests that there needs to be some change in that. Yeah. So material, I have this I found around in the house.
Beautiful. Is it wood?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So I also thought of a balloon and letting it go in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Like writing messages on balloons and just letting them go.
Mm.
I don't know.
So I think the gun on the soap is already really strong piece. So that's I
Yeah.
think a thing on its own, and I think that's something that should maybe continue. Like you should wash that
Yes.
gun away, and record how you're washing it away.
Yes.
And I think that's a strong piece. With the wood, you can think about putting an image or words on the block. So you could carve into you could paint the block of wood, you can carve
Yeah.
into the block of wood, you can burn
Okay.
the wood, right? You can go outside
Ooh.
and burn it up at the end. So
Yeah.
so this idea of people that are wrongfully incarcerated, which is so many people, and to spend more than your lifetime in prison, what that means, right? This idea of being controlled and being behind bars and being locked away from culture when and especially with when it's wrongfully accused.
Right. Like you're being punished for something,
For
that
what? You're
punishment.
punished for
Yeah.
nothing. Punished for being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Right.
And then justice not being, and then you're talking about the similar Project Olusegun, where injustice is
Right.
unfortunately so prevalent still.
Yes.
So in a way, what would the message be? You could do messages to I think it's about maybe who your audience is. If your audience is thinking about connecting to the people who are incarcerated and wrongfully incarcerated, that's
Yes.
one thing. You can communicate with them, sending them hope or whatever, sending them messages, sending love letters to people to continue. Because how do you continue in that state when you're so oppressed? How do you continue believing in life, and what keeps you going?
Right.
What kept him going behind bars for 25 years? What was that?
Because he knew he had not done it, and that was his, his thrive of waking up every day and being locked up 24 hours a day. When he was sentenced, he was sent to a maximum type prison, so he was locked up for part of most of the day. So that I know also takes a toll on you.
Oh my gosh.
Being in a room like that is arm's length for 24 hours a day. Especially for something you didn't do, that
Right.
could be so it had to be strength from
within.
Yeah.
And I think that's something to think about for the block of wood. Imagine that block of wood being your cell, right?
Yes.
It takes that form, it's that shape, it's a small square or rectangle or whatever. And think about if you were to survive living, I don't know if you want to, you can draw fences, you can carve a fence around it, you can draw that shape. And in between that, I think showing both the fact that you are locked up, and at the same time finding ways to break through those walls, regardless if you are imprisoned like that, right? Because mentally you have to do that. You have to, it's hard enough to exist in the world not being incarcerated and judged and all of it, right? It's hard enough, but to imagine being in a prison and to be able to transcend that prison. I know that in for example, there was an artist who was working on Robben Island in South Africa. He was imprisoned with Nelson Mandela. And what they did with that prison camp is they, for example, wrote courses like community college courses or courses in general on toilet paper, so that inmates would go to, when they go to the bathroom, they could read algebra. They could read.
Oh, wow.
So they turned even a prison institution, by flipping it on its head, it became a university system. And those are the things that give me hope and is so inspiring, is to think about changing your context into something that completely flips the idea. So finding some way to carve into that block, some vision of hope And I don't know which way you want to do that.
Yeah.
You can paint it, you can scratch it, you can draw it, you can start working with that lump and see how you can transform it. Even if you carve it into a whole other shape, you could
Yeah.
change that block into a circle and it would become the world. You could,
Mm.
it just does, but I would also record as you're doing it. As you're doing it, your mind is going to tell you what to do next. So I would
Right.
photograph it as you go to see the transformation. I think that's important.
Okay.
And
Gotcha.
play with it and see what comes. But those ideas are going to be interesting. And I think
Gotcha.
limiting yourself to that one block is important, just to think about, this is what you have, just like in the
Right.
prison, like this is what you're given.
This is all
How
I
do
have.
you change that? How do you change
Right.
that into something meaningful for yourself? And that could take
Right.
on, you can write on the block with a permanent marker. I don't know if you have what kind of carving materials you have,
Yes.
but taking, you know, even a knife to it, just be mindful about cutting. You can also burn it off again. You can completely
Right.
transform it and turn it into ash, and you can use the ash to draw, because that would give you charcoal. So
Yeah.
it's infinite.
Yeah.
Start playing over the
Okay.
holidays,
I
and
will.
have a wonderful holiday. I will not see you on
Thank you.
Wednesday because we had a conversation today, and
Yes.
I will see you on Monday after the holiday.
Okay. Thank you.
Be
Have
well,
a
stay healthy.
great Thanksgiving.
You
You
too.
and your family and everyone else.
Yeah, everybody on the class.
Okay.
All right,
Happy
Amy, thank you.
Thanksgiving. Bye-bye.
Georgina, did you want to go next? Or
Yes.
okay.
So, like everybody is so confused. For me, I want to do the art project, and I want to draw the painting, but I always say the color missing, the missing of the painting is my big issue, and I don't have any paint at home at all.
Okay.
And the color pencils that I have are not even good either. So, but I want to draw my goddaughter. I already started. The reason why I want to draw her is, especially this picture.
Oh,
Yeah.
beautiful.
So she's one person that when the mom got married is like 18 years. There's no sign of baby. So she was almost born when the mom is almost like 50 years. And me and the mom connected and a lot of so many levels that it's a whole lot of history. So I don't want to go in there. But the point is what to use to for my painting, like especially if it has to be like a cardboard or a wood or something or stone. But I'm not good with the missing of the painting. That's one issue I
Okay.
have right now.
So you're missing the
And
materials.
I did like a sketch of it.
Yep.
I don't know if you can see it well.
Yeah, I can. Excellent. Yeah, she's beautiful.
Yeah.
So we can do a number of things. You can do sorry, there's thunder. There's you can do pencil, just like you have in paper, right? You can do the shading in the same way. When you're looking at that photograph, I want you to think about, imagine touching her head or feeling just like you pet your baby, right? And when you go across that form, think about the pencil going in that direction. So shading is going to become important, not just, and imagine drawing her without the features. So forget about mouth, eyes, and nose, because we all go to that. But think about how to draw her forehead, how to draw her cheeks, right? The subtle difference between going around the corner like that, right? And the pencil's going to take you around. It's almost like you're in a very loving way, kind of like petting her face, and you're drawing in the same way, right? You already have a connection to this child in particular, right? You have this loving relationship. And with the paint and colored pencils, let me email the school and see if they can send you a watercolor set or something that will help you have some more experience. My guess is that I think you're interested in painting. So maybe having a set of paint. Would you be interested in doing a painting?
Yes, I will. And if I cannot do that, like I heard you talking to Olusegun, I also gave me an idea that melting the soap and put it in more broad surface to give you enough space to maybe write any word that you want. Like for me, what I did was the racism. So if I boil the soap and then put it in more big surface, that would give me like in bigger surface to write the word. And for
Yes.
me, I think I put some beads on it to make the word stand out and then wash it away. That idea is also there.
You can do a similar thing to Olusegun. You could melt, but make sure it's the bars of soap. It can't be liquid soap. Liquid soap won't solidify. So it has to be the bars of soap that will be melted down. You could also paint on the soap. Like you could paint, if you paint because of your love of drawing and painting, you could you can scratch into the soap as a drawing. You can also paint into it and wash that away. And then what does that mean, right? If you're taking an image of somebody and washing it away, perhaps it's people you want to get rid of instead of the other way around, where you really, when you love them, you want them to stay permanent. But I think maybe the school can send you a kit of paint and canvas if you're interested in learning how to paint. And I think you are. So let me do some research and see what funding we have, and maybe I'll see if we can have it shipped to your address.
Okay.
Yeah?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. All right, because I think that drawing of your goddaughter is very, very important. I think it's very, very nice.
Yeah, she's so special for me. So people think anytime she comes to my house, they see a picture, they think she's my daughter. But I know what we went through with the mom and taking that long time before she was born, and also she kind of like connects. It's like my own daughter. That's how I see it. I don't see her as my goddaughter. So.
Right. And imagine that drawing being on a permanent paint on a surface, because to have that particular child as a symbol, right, of hope, of beauty, right? Just putting her image out there is important right now, right? Because her image is so important, so vital. All right, Georgina, let me talk to the school and get back to you, okay? I will see you on Monday then, because we had that conversation. If you have any questions on Wednesday, I can send you an email to see if they can send you those materials. Okay. Besides paint, what would you like? Would you like colored pencils?
If that's the only option, that's fine.
Watercolors or acrylics? If you had your choice, what would you paint with?
The point is, for me, I really don't know much about the colors, either the acrylics or the water ones. My fear is what will make the painting more easier and not mess up my work. That's why I always like to be safe with the pencil. So
I know. But the more you practice, right? It's the same. It's because we're familiar with the pencil. We know because we've been holding this thing since we were children in school, right? And we are certain about it in a way that we're not certain about brush. But sometimes not being certain is the way to learn, right? It's, yes, you will make mistakes and you will maybe need more canvases to paint and design with. And it is more frustrating. But it's also, the more you do it, the more familiar you will become. And therefore, and I think your painting style or your drawing style is good. So I think you'd have a lot of fun painting.
Yeah.
All right, let's give it a shot. Let me talk to the school, okay?
All
right, Georgina. Take care, baby. Have fun. Who would like to go next? Kenny, Ayomida, either one. I'm sorry. Thank you for being so accommodating to listening to everyone. Sorry.
You could go next. I'm right.
All right. Thanks, Ayomida. Kenny, what's up? What do you want to do?
So I'm still torn apart, like the art project and the paper. I kind of don't know how creative I could be for the art project. For the materials, I do have some, or not my own, but my sister. She has some acrylic paint that I could use. And then I could do it on a canvas also. And then for the paper, I was like looking at the Van Gogh Museum.
Mm.
So those are like kind of like some options that I'm looking at.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So most important thing is, what do you want to say with your work? Like, what do you want to communicate? What is important to you right now? Because that will determine what you should do. You could have a good time going to the Van Gogh Museum. He was a very alternative painter for his time, and he would be interesting person to research for sure. You can also think about what you would like to say with your artwork, and that's what you would want to focus on, what you want to create. But it's important to think about, if you want first the inspiration, for example, from the Van Gogh works, and from someone who's lived a life with a disability, and he was able to overcome it by painting, right? But not in his lifetime. In his lifetime, he wasn't renowned. It's now 50, and generally artists are renowned like 50 years after they're dead, which makes it a very sad profession. But you can think about how his work has affected and is now heralded, 50 to 100 years later. And even as his life was quite difficult. I don't know if you've seen the movie. There's a film on him where they created, actually painters created hundreds and hundreds of paintings and then animated them from the paint itself. Have you seen that movie? I think it's called Loving Vincent. Have a look at that movie, because every scene and every is a painting. So every scene is transformed. Yeah. So Loving Vincent is a good one and then doing research on him might be interesting to you. So again, could either go one way or another. I would go to the museum and check it out and see what you think. And then if you get an idea from looking at the Van Goghs to create your own artwork, then we can go into that after Thanksgiving. But if you get focused on Van Gogh, I would, you could just do the paper, and that's fine too.
I think that I'm just like looking through like some of the museums, and then I see the Guggenheim Museum in New York. And that one looked cool to me about like sculpture. I think I'm kind of like, I really want to do something with like sculpturing. So I might just do an art project. And then for the sculpture, I guess what is most important to me kind of in a way is like maybe COVID. I think that has really affected my life.
Yeah.
So, then maybe, yeah, so that has really affected my life. And then I was wondering like, what is like the best tools to use to like sculpture something?
So if you were going to work in 3D, you can think about working in clay. You can think about working in wood, certainly. You can think about working in stone, and they get progressively harder to work in. But if you want a soft material to work in, you can also think about wax. You can think about soap. And those are much easier to work in and manipulate. But I think wax might be one of the nicest materials to both carve into as well as cut out, or clay. I mean, it's up to you, but either one of those, you're probably not going to be able to make it be. Wax is going to eventually melt under strong temperatures, and clay will dry. So, and it will be solid, but it will be highly breakable unless you have a kiln. So if you're trying to do a sculpture, again, think about what 3 dimensions, what do you want to make into tangible form? Why put an object into 3 dimensions? It's going to become real. It's going to become its own thing. So think about what you want that object to say, what you want to depict. If it's going to be abstract, if it's going to be representational, what do you want to sculpt?
Do you think like the Crayola air dry clay would work?
Yes, it will. It will. Air drying, self-drying clay will be fine. Crayola will work. the material is going to dry on its own. So it's again, you're going to have a timed thing to explore. It's going to give you maybe a day or two of flexibility, and then it'll start drying unless you put a cover on top with, if you're sculpting and put a wet rag with a plastic bag on top, it's going to stay moist enough for you to manipulate, okay? But maybe do some sketches or ideas about what you want to sculpt. You can go to the Greek and Italian traditions, you can submerge what you want into water, and then as you lift it or drain the bathtub or a sink, you can start seeing and carving. If you wanted to do a copy, for example, of an object, you can put it into water and then have the water level sink, and then carve the first sections of the carving. And then as it goes down, you keep going and carving on both, in all 3 dimensions all the way around. So there's various techniques to use in 3 dimensions. But again, I want to know the subject of what you want to do.
I think I'm gonna do something that's like impacted me the most, and then I'm gonna do something around like COVID.
Right, and in terms of COVID, I think more than just the word or the 3-dimensional sculpture of it, of the molecule or of the organism, of the bacteria virus, you could put that into 3 dimensions and you could smash it, or you could make it out of clay, self-hardening clay, take a hammer and video yourself like done with it, right? So that could be quite dramatic for you to do. I think the word is not going to be as strong. It's not going to have as big of an impact, because putting it into language becomes more of a theory than the actual real thing. So the more real you can make it, the better. So maybe looking at scientific examples of corona, what that looks like, creating it. You can create it out of multiple materials. You can do clay in conjunction with wood, or for the spikes or whatever, and then think about the best way to destroy it.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing like the molecules, and how it looks instead of the word, because I feel like when I was doing the word for like the impermanence one, it didn't really wasn't kind of meaningful. So I feel like,
yeah, I think getting the form, and if you're working in 3D, it would make sense to do the form of it. Okay.
Okay.
All right. See you later, Kenny.
See you.
Ayomide, thank you for being patient. Kenny, I'll see you on next Monday, if you want to see me on Wednesday, just send me an email.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very welcome.
Bye. Have a great day.
You have a great holiday.
Bye.
Take care and be well. Ayomide, talk to me. Thank you for being patient.
So I'm stuck in between doing a little painting or doing drawing. I'm not quite sure yet, but
either way, what kind of material do you have?
I'm working on a canvas, I think. Yeah, canvas.
Okay, perfect. And then what are you doing the picture of?
I'm thinking of doing like a symbol of unity, like either 2 people holding hands or just a single person raising up a fist.
Yeah, you can.
Like the main idea is like unity.
Okay, so you can think about how the hands interact and what images you have and you're pulling from, right? Think about how, if you're going to, the difference between how people touch, okay? So there's one thing to sort of shake hands in a diplomatic way that the politicians do, right? Like that kind of thing. Of course, that's all pre-COVID. There's another thing to have hands come in fists, right, together. That's a different kind of relationship. So the way that these strangers will touch is very, very important, especially if you want something like unity. If you have them facing in profile.
No, just the hands.
Just the hand. Oh, you're doing just the hands.
Just the hands.
Okay. So yeah, so you want to think about all the hand expressions that are coming together. You could think about different races, different cultures, and the hands coming together in the most loving gestures. To understand unity. You can almost think about it as one person, really, like having the hands be maybe different colors, but doing you can think about prayer or like holding hands like this together, right? And that, and if the hands are could possibly be from one person and have different skin tones. How that would symbolize unity in a way where, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand it. I was really thinking about doing like 2 different skin tone.
Mm. And so when you're doing skin tones, have you painted the skin tone? What colors are you using for skin tones?
Going like brown in white and pink, something like that.
Are you mixing skin tones?
Yep.
Okay, so when you're mixing skin tone, there's 4 colors that for all skin tones will work. If you take, are you using acrylic paint?
Yep.
Okay, so you have white titanium and black, ivory or whatever, those 2. And then you have ochre, yellow
Red.
ochre, and a cadmium red. And those 4 colors in combination will make either the lighter skin tones or the darker skin tones. So if you add white to those colors, they will obviously go lighter and make sort of Caucasian or Asian skin tones. When you go from the mid-tone, from your red and your ochre together and add black, you're going to get your Latino skin tones, and then adding black and blue will give you a nice range for African American skin tones. It's you can really play, but they're basically the same 4 colors. And they will give you similar results. So and it's all in the sort of skin tone family. So it's fun to play with them. In fact, if you mix just hundreds of those different skin tones, there's a really great project. Photographer, I'll have to find it for you. I'll send you an email. There is a project of looking at the skin tones and photographing various people with the color skin tone behind them. And so you see everyone, and there's no, of course, everybody's a different shade and different mix. So there's no one residence, one specific skin tone. It's a misconception. There's of course different shades of everybody because you have different effects of light, and it's just how we've turned out, right? I love the idea. And of course, how you draw those hands is going to be important. How you paint those hands is going to be important. How they're touching, the gesture that they're touching with. What about the background? So if you're focused on the hands, what's happening in the background of the painting?
I'm probably going all black.
Okay, I think that's
so
lovely.
the image could pop.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and that really nice contrast and the really dense, beautiful black background is also very strong. Sounds like a great project. Also, after COVID, I don't know what your plan is for next semester, but we're hoping to have a show, an exhibition in for emerging artists. And I think I would love to see more of your work to have you be in that show.
All right.
Okay.
I still got probably like 2 more art class next semester.
Okay, so just don't lose track and send me an email, and maybe do you check your school email?
Yep.
Okay, so I'll give you information once the show is solidified. I'll give you more information and you can submit your work to that, okay?
All right.
Okay, so for now, for maybe for the first draft, I would like to see the sketches for the hands, or how you want to do it. Do you have an image already?
Do I send it like the draft?
Yeah, you can send it as a JPEG. You can send it as an attachment, or you can put it into a Word document. You can just send me images of the drawings for it, or the way that you want to do it. Think about, again, like what position those hands are going to take, because all of the different handholds will feel different. Like they'll have different impact. Which way are you doing the hands again?
I think I'm going with like give me a second. I got a picture of the mixing you're saying. I'm trying to share my screen.
Great. Are you able to share your screen, or is it telling you that you?
No, I can't.
Multiple, I can do that. Try now. It should be possible, but if it's not, you can also send me images.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Why
I could
don't you
just send the
just,
pictures.
right, email me images, and if you have any questions, let me know. If you would like to have another conversation on Wednesday before the holiday, then I can meet with you. But otherwise, you can just start working on your project, and if you have questions, we can address them as they come.
When is the first draft due?
First draft is due the Wednesday after we come back, so that's December 2nd.
Okay.
Are you staying safe? Everything going
You?
okay? Yeah?
Yeah, I'm in though.
Good.